final lecture is going to be about this Pokemon Go app. And I tested the app some maybe half year ago. Since then, maybe it's got some new updates, but I'm mostly going to talk about. It's not so important what the updates later on were, because I'm mostly going to focus on why it became so popular in the beginning. So this start of this app was very, very successful. Got a lot of users, and it's the most popular location-based game out there today. And it became the most popular location-based game in a very short time after it was released. So the first features that it had were also the most important, I think. Has anybody played? Okay. Philip, and what was your name? Teemu.
Yours.
Okay, and Jonas. Okay, so 50% of people, more than 50%, because I was also in the list, played this game. It's quite a lot, I think so. Now, most of the things I'm going to say are my opinion, so don't take it as a yes, it must be that reason. And nobody really knows why some apps become popular and others don't. It is very common that two apps appear, maybe even around the same time, have similar features, but one of them becomes very popular, the other one becomes forgotten. There are many factors that come into play. But what is this game? If you are going to be very crude when you define it, it is some kind of a navigation application. You are going to use it to find different objects on the map. Now, they might be real objects on the map, or they might be virtual objects on the map that are defined somehow by the game system. But more or less, it can be compared to some kind of navigation. The map is very simple when you compare it to other maps. You don't have services. You have some kind of building shapes there, but it's very much simplified. On the other hand, they do color it differently depending on the season, or depending on the weather outside, or time of the day, or these kind of factors. So I believe they aim for this because it becomes more appealing, especially to younger audience. People like to look, especially kids, like to look more at colorful things when it comes to games, rather than the boring, very pale, for example, default Google map that you see in everyday applications. So I also recommend, if you're ever going to build a game, do consider styling your maps so that they are more appealing, and also remove what you don't need from there. If you open Google Maps, you're going to see their text saying Tiedepuisto, or some icon for hospital, or whatever. They are not needed in the game, because in the game it's almost like that service doesn't exist. So put your emphasis on the things that you want your players to do, and remove unnecessary components from there. Now, this character that you play in the game, we did talk a little bit about location markers before, and we did come up to some conclusions like, okay, location has to be very obvious. Which marker on the map is going to be your location? In some applications, like in Mopsy, I think in the Windows Phone versions, we put profile picture of a person just there on the map, so very, very simple. But these guys go even above that. They have a 3D model, customizable character, where you can change different properties of this of this marker. And you can make it look similar to yourself, or you can make it look somehow that you find appealing. And I have to say that it's not as important feature because you don't see, like if we go back here, you don't really see other characters on the map, other people playing the game on the map. At least you didn't in the old versions. You just see yourself, and these creatures that you may interact with are also visible. But if you think about this kind of customizable character, its usefulness would come if many characters are there and you want to know which is you. So somehow to distinguish yourself from others. But in the game, it's very rare that you see two characters in the same place, and never on that map, at least to my knowledge. So it's more or less this kind of a dress-up feature that some people like to experiment and play around with. So eye candy, more or less, but its usefulness is not that big in the game. Now, I think one of the biggest reasons why this game became popular is this collection motif. The purpose of the game is to collect items, and you have a notebook there, this Pokédex, where all the possible things that you can collect are listed, and if you haven't found some object, then it's not there. So it somehow motivates you to get more things because something is not yet completed. Now this ties very much to personality types, to people, hobbies, but you may or may not know that some people are stamp collectors, or they collect some kind of maybe posters or these kind of baseball cards or whatever. So this collection motif has been established already long ago, and I think it's one of the reasons why this game is also popular. If you see that something like this is incomplete, maybe if you also see somebody else's more complete than yours, it motivates you to open the app again, to try to get some more. Especially because collecting some more of these items is not necessarily very difficult. And there is some randomness involved, which means that if you're feeling lucky on that day, you may try to open the game and think that the luck will contribute to whatever you're going to find on that day. So why not open the game again? Okay. Each of these items, these Pokemon, have also different properties. I'm not going to go very much in depth here because they are not so much location oriented, but basically each of these are some kind of virtual creatures, and you can use them in some kind of battles later on. So you can, that's when you interact with other peoples in these kind of battle scenarios, but I'm not a big expert in that, so I'm not going to go too much in depth here. But basically it gives you another reason why you want your collection to be full, because some of the creatures are better than others. So if you're going to be lucky and find one of the rarer creatures, then you have also a higher chance to win these battles on another occasion. But I never personally tried that feature of the game, so I'm not going to talk about that. Okay. Once you found the character, it's not immediately going to come in your collection. You have to do something. And what happens at this point when you are in proximity of a character is that the character is going to need to be clicked, so you press it on the map, and then you start interacting with it. And the purpose here is to catch it in this type of Pokeball. So how do you do it? You basically do this type of gesture, on the phone screen, like move it up, and then the ball tries to hit that character. If it hits the character, there's going to be some probability that you catch the item or not. So even that is not going to be enough to collect him. You might have to try several times to get that character. If you activate this AR feature, standing for this augmented reality, then instead of having this fake background, you have the camera projecting a background on behind the character. Phone uses also this accelerometer information, so that if you move around while the character is on the screen, the character tries to stay in its relative position to the background. So basically that's what this augmented reality means. It just means that if the character kind of looks like sitting on that small branch there, and this is just a coincidence, it doesn't do any fancy image processing or anything. If you move the phone a little bit, the character will more or less be still on the same branch. So it gives you a kind of idea that, okay, these are almost real items, at least if I look through the phone's camera. So, very interesting feature. Of course, the game works very well even if you remove this. Like, you can play it with no problem without activating this mode, but most of the people, I believe, use that mode. Even though I think it may use even more battery, I'm not sure how much more and if it affects. So, if you like playing so much that you want to play for a longer time, definitely I wouldn't activate this AR mode because it's doing some extra thing. So a bit debatable when it is useful or not, but I was in the US when the game appeared. I didn't even know the game appeared. And I had a Windows phone at that time, so no chance to get it to play on it. I played it maybe 1 year after it appeared. But while in the US, I was on a road trip. I was driving from place to place and staying at hotels. And people there were like, most of the people I was interacting with was the hotel person at the register there, registration desk, a reception, yeah. And sometimes they were multiple people there talking about this game. And I remember one conversation in the background, like, yeah, come go see James's Pokemon. One of them is standing on his desk or something, some kind of joke like that. And the guy was like 40s, in his 40s. So somehow this feature was attracting people, at least was making them talk about it. Yeah, and once you capture this Pokemon, it goes and becomes registered in your Pokédex, this kind of collection, basically. Okay, now you may or may not have seen this older game. It's a very old game, I think. Well, not very old game, but 2009. It appeared once these, more or less these touchscreen devices appeared. But I think variants way before that existed that you can play with your mouse, like just point and clicking. The purpose is just you have a basket and you throw a paper ball into it. The same mechanics is there. It's more or less a copy-paste of the same game, but in Pokemon, the basket moves. So the Pokemon, the creature, tries to also escape you. So a little bit extra element, but more or less, until now, what I want to say is that Pokemon is no more than a navigation app a dress-up kind of fancy feature there, some styling, and this paper toss game. So all of the ideas for creating it are just recycled and put together into one. And the reason why it didn't appear before is because of time. So you couldn't implement it 10 years ago, because like this paper toss, because phone cameras were much worse, location wasn't so reliable, map services were not as good. A lot of reasons, technological advancement reasons are also there. So I'm pretty sure that already at that time people were thinking about Pokemon and these location-based games, but putting everything together into one was not gonna happen. So battery was also bad. Processors on the phone were also bad. You couldn't have these 3D items moving around and not lag or not drain your battery immediately. Right. Now, I think this is some kind of other features there that I haven't really played much with, but you can pay to get some special things that you just can't find on your own. So lazy characters, lazy people may still want to be good in the game. And they may or may not have money. So you could not really cheat, but cheat to get features in the game. And I believe that some people are doing that. Then these battles, this is some kind of gym where you can have these kind of battles between Pokemon. Evolving some is possible, so some Pokemon can transform in some other after you do something with them. I don't remember exact details. And they have also some kind of eggs lying around that if you walk enough, you're gonna hatch them. I haven't really played these things, so I'm sure there are many other features, and yeah, so much more that you can do with the app, but the basic ones are what I described before. Now, again, I don't know exactly why it became such a big hit, but it's very easy to play. So this paper toss game from before, it's just you throwing the paper, and then the phone picks up on the physics, on the movement of your finger on the screen, takes from their acceleration and puts it into the ball. So basically, you just do a flick of the finger, and complicated things starts to happen, and it may or may not work. You can repeat as much as you want, and it's fun. It's kind of like a trial and error kind of thing. You also move around and interact with others to some extent. The franchise for Pokemon is very popular. If this game would have been something else, like Small Creatures Go, I don't think it would have been as popular as Pokemon Go. Even if you would have as many, like hundreds of other creatures, let's say Mopsy characters or whatever, I think the franchise was the main reason why this became popular. And I talked a little bit about it before, but the people who were before fans of the series now are 10 years or more years older. So they are already adults, they can already afford phones and whatever, and they might install to play just out of curiosity, like let's see what's coming up next. Not necessarily because they plan to be very good at the game or whatever. Okay, and finally, well, this is my opinion. All of them are my opinion, but Pokemon hit the news a lot. It hit the news a lot. Like while I was in US, I was reading this news there, and it was saying something's funny, something's horrible. Like two people stumbled across some dead body while looking for Pokemon in some neighborhood, or some guy got robbed while playing Pokemon because other players were luring him in some dark alley, whatever, and then when he's alone in the dark alley, they took his phone. Or, I don't know, somebody was not paying attention because was looking at that and went into some traffic accident, or whatever. All of this seemingly bad publicity was actually free publicity. I mean, many people watching the news, I don't think they would say, I'm not installing that app because I might stumble across a dead body. I think they might be saying, oh, there's a Pokemon app. Let's see what it looks like. So basically, having issues in the app, or many other small problems. So in the beginning there was a big boom, like so many people using it that their service started to fail. Their servers were too overwhelmed, and again it was hitting the news, like app is not working in big cities, discrimination, whatever kind of problems. Again, free advertisement. So sometimes having issues with your app, if it's starting to become popular, may help you in some strange way. Yeah. Anyway, so I think these are all my opinions on this game. But what do you think? Especially the ones you played. Do you agree with these things, or do you think they are crazy or stupid, or do you have better reasons for why it became popular? Do you still play the app? Okay. How about the new answer?
Yes,
No.
sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, so about 10% of the initial 60% are still playing the app. It did have this big boom in the beginning. So typical case when for games, I would say in general. If a new game comes up, people are curious, they try all the features, and then they get bored, and then the interest starts to decline. It takes a little bit, of course, until the app becomes popular, if it ever becomes popular. Sometimes these booms are very small if you try yourself to publish a game. Your small group of friends will find out about it. It's not as big as, it's not as extraordinary that your friends would continue to share with the others. So it's more or less going to be your friends and maybe a few other people. They try it out and then it starts to stabilize like that. This is not true for all apps, but for games it's typically the case. It's this interest in the beginning when something new comes up, especially if it's relatable, like this Pokemon franchise there. But other apps, for example, travel apps, I don't know, hotels.com or all the other equivalents, there are so many of them. They typically see this kind of pattern because of the seasons changing, or because of times when people take holidays off or whatever. So they don't necessarily see rise and fall in their service unless some kind of competitor comes up. But for games, unfortunately, it's typically this case that you get a lot of interest in the beginning, but after that, people start to see what they can do with that. And like in Pokemon, it's also a bit of an issue, this starting, because you're really a nobody in the beginning, and you may interact with other people who are much above your level, and that's somehow discouraging. So it can also contribute to you stopping to use the app, thinking like, okay, I did collect a little bit of these things, and I can't possibly get as many as that guy. So it's somehow making you give up somehow. Any comments? I mean, even people who haven't played the app, have you heard about it, or do you know others who have played, and why do they play? Why did you install the app in the beginning?
Just to comment on the seasonality, I think it also holds for Pokemon Go. Because it was really wise to publish it in the summer, and all the people went outside and gathered outside at Pokestops and stuff. And when the winter came, you could experience that many people stopped playing Pokemon Go, and afterwards in the spring, not all of the players started it again. So the user amount came down a little, but I think you can experience it every summer that some of the people are coming back to play Pokemon Go.
Funny thing about summer is that it's always summer somewhere on the earth.
Sure, yeah.
So target audience, I'm pretty sure they considered it, and I think US was one of the main targets that they wanted to hit, and it was summer there. So I think your point is very good. Of course, the franchise became popular in Japan first, but it's one of these franchises that broke the border, and I really think that in US many people played this, and of course there are many people living there, and just by hearing how much like random people on the street were discussing it or playing it, definitely it was their intended audience. Do you know how the data is generated in Pokemon? Where do they decide to put the Pokemon, the creatures? Or these, there are also some physical entities, I think they're called Pokestops. So I think maybe Tiedepuisto is one of them, where you can buy some things or collect some other items, like those balls that you're throwing around. They end at some point, so you have to find more. And if you walk by, I think, Science Park, you may collect a few balls. Do you know how this data is generated?
For the
I
Pokestops?
think,
Yeah, just a second.
I think that what I've heard of it, they generate the Pokemon where more often in places where there are high density of phones.
Of?
Phones.
Phones.
For mobile users.
Yeah.
In general, not just players.
Yeah, okay. How do they know where the high density is?
They somehow access the mobile network.
I don't
Maybe.
think they can do that. I mean, they could if they would be Google or somebody that has already, like Google has Android, and basically they could access how many Android users are in some place. But this was another company. I don't think, well, there are probably some kind of available data sources out there, but I think you were trying to say something.
It was for the Pokestops. I heard that the company that made Pokemon Go had a previous game called Ingress,
Yes.
and this game was like a beta for Pokemon Go, and they just collect data for Pokemon Go, and they
Okay.
budget on it.
Yeah.
I think for Pokemons, if they don't access the data to know how many people there are in some kind of zone, they can just check how many people touch the Pokestops, and you can have an idea of how many people there is around.
Okay. Yes. So before Pokemon became popular, the same company had another game, and this is exactly what you were touching on in Kuopio. The game is called Ingress, and it was also a location-based game, but I don't think many people heard of it as much as they heard about this Pokemon Go, because of probably the franchise. In Ingress, I haven't played it, but I had a few friends who did. I think the purpose was to conquer territories or something like that. You would go and maybe take pictures of different things or just visit different places. So again, the purpose was to move around some real locations, real places, and interact with them in some way. So what they did for these Pokestops, they collected all the playing activity from Ingress, and they clustered it into some kind of locations where people were mostly active. So it's exactly what you're saying, but instead of accessing the phone network, they accessed the database of a previous game that they had. So making some kind of assumptions of how many people would play Pokemon Go if this many people played the other game, and then they can get an idea of the audience in a specific region. So it was a good idea, and it seemed to work, even though sometimes it was also problematic. And in Finland, the news, I think, was something like small towns have no Pokemon, or you can't play with the same benefits in smaller towns. So they definitely didn't have a perfect solution. But I don't think their target audience were small towns in Lapland or yeah, in Joensuu people were playing, and they are. I would have to say that even now, every month, if not every week, I see somebody playing the game. Maybe one person, but yeah, in front of my house people gather because there is a Pokestop there, and they go in the morning, maybe they smoke or have a coffee outdoors in the cold, but they want to do something with the game, and I'm pretty sure they are doing that. Sometimes I maybe pass by and I can confirm it, but other times if I see somebody there with his phone, I automatically assume he's playing the game. So yeah. Okay, but these are more or less my thoughts on it, and unfortunately, unless you buy the rights to use such a franchise, then I think if you want to make a popular game, it's not enough to have it there, like really thought out, implemented, but you need some kind of publisher. You need to somehow give it to somebody who is already popular, and have him help in some way, brand it maybe somehow differently. Otherwise, you really have to have something really new, really unique that you can do by yourself. Being active on social networks might also help. If you have many friends, then you can spread the word easier. Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know if you heard about Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird, yes. Is it the one that you continuously touch the screen?
I think it's the counter example of what you're saying, that it doesn't have a franchise. It was a kind of bad game.
Yeah.
And
Did it? Yeah. Did it not have a franchise?
I think, yeah.
Does it look like something familiar?
Yeah, it looks, but
Like what?
like Mario, but
Like Mario.
nobody said that.
Nobody said that, but
Everyone can say, you can tell that it's Mario inspired, but
yeah,
it was like
of course.
almost, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I installed this game. So it's a game where you control this bird by just tapping the screen. Every time you tap the screen, the bird flaps one time. So if you stop touching the screen, the bird is going to fall down. And you have to direct it through this kind of complicated path. And I think your name is Oscar.
Yeah.
And Oscar was saying that it doesn't have a franchise. It's an example where it's the opposite what I was saying, and it is true. I mean, when I say these kind of things, I don't mean it in the literal sense.
Yeah.
I mean it that in general, that's kind of what is probably going to happen. There are always exceptions to the rule. But here, I actually think that there was some hidden franchise. So I think that they took elements from the Mario game
Yes.
to make it resemble it. They don't have to mention anything, and because they don't use the character, I think this was, I don't know, I really don't know, but I think it may have been legal. They just reused some of these sprites and enough just to get the idea that, okay, what is this Mario spin-off? Or it's not really a spin-off, but I installed it because it looked like Mario.
Okay.
I was just curious, like, what is this thing? And I played it a couple of times. It's a pretty fun game and very simple. Some years ago, there was a game, my girlfriend told me about it. I think she was working at a school as a teacher, and she was saying some kids are playing this weird game. I don't remember the official name, but it may have been Tap the Egg. You have a picture of an egg and you have to tap it. And if you tap it 1 million times, I think something happened, like it breaks. So no kind of franchise there. Just an app that counts clicks. Like everybody here can implement it during the course of this lecture. And
Maybe for a successful game, you have to be at a first have a franchise, have a good mechanics, or be completely stupid. The idea.
well, let's just say that sometimes trying too hard to understand the audience, trying too hard to abide to all the rules may not be the only thing. You should also be lucky, and you should also think that, yeah, maybe many people don't like complicated games. They just want to do something. And I don't know if it's stubbornness or whatever, that they press the screen for a million times just to, I don't know. But some people will do it. Apparently they did. And for what? I mean, million times will take some time. At least few weeks of using it. I don't know. no idea. But anyway, yeah. So there are, I think these are just some general guidelines for what you should try to do, because if you don't, then you have to be very, very lucky to have a successful app. But some of these other examples, I don't know if the designers really thought of all these issues, that it might become popular, or did it just become popular? So, and then they were as surprised as we are. So hard to say.